everyone doing? How's the homework? Yeah? Finish? Nice. These are great.
I'm not sure. Maybe I could have done it.
How about you guys? Yeah? Oh, okay, that's really good.
I have one question. When it comes out promotion,
See, there's a promotion going on the website now.
Yeah, write a logic. Like
That-
anything that bothers you, you have to write something for it, right? So going forward, like that's kind of what I wanted to start adopting. What you're seeing is it's going to be a continuous problem for when you're working in a real environment, right? There might be some pop-ups coming on and off, right? You have to write something. If this pop-up shows, then dismiss it, right? Or so your code has to handle that. So same thing with some of you guys I saw in the chat room saying the month is not now it's fine, right? Because it doesn't have to go back. So you have to figure out what happens. So obviously, if the maybe you want to check if the month is displayed or whatever that month is. So you have to think about all this logic, right? You can't just like stop coding and say, hey, it's not working, or hey, Mohammed, help me here, right? That's not gonna help you a lot, right? What you have to do is you have to start, and that's okay to make mistakes. You have to maybe spend a long hours, but that's what
no,
coding is.
in Selenium they have some
Alert stuff.
yeah.
It's not really an alert. I mean, we're gonna go over that, but these days the way the alerts are built, we don't really use that anymore. This modern apps are like they're all elements, so to speak.
Because they add to this promotion, and we saw
Your script's
now.
not working.
No, we saw now, and we know how we can do it.
Yeah,
We have to.
but any other questions about the homework?
How we can check how much children we select and how much our window is open?
Okay, so let's think about it. Uh, so let's say we search for this. No, we're not searching. So what was your question? So let's say children 6.
Yeah. And should the sixth window, how we can check, for example, if we choose 5, it will be 5.
Oh, so I mean you have to check how many drop down is displayed here, right? So maybe keep a count or something, right? So you check one and then you increment a count, you check another one, right? So you see, okay, how many children selected here is 6, and then each time you count one and see what is the last value here. So you can kind of write some sort of a counter, write a loop for that, right? And then at the end, when you're done with it, whatever the last value here that is shown, like I don't know how the XPath or elements working, but you kind of have to figure this out in a way that okay, no, only 6 are displaying here, right? So sometimes you might select 5, even though you look for that element might still be there on the page, right? So at that point you have to say, hey, is child 6 displayed? Does that make sense? So it's gonna come off as false or now no such element exceptions and things like that. So in that means okay, the last value that was shown was 5. So there are a few different ways to go about it. I'm just curious how you did it. Did you do it?
I'm trying, but it's different expressions. That's why I can't understand how I can like,
Yeah. So that's interesting point. You have to find a common XPath for this, right? And say find elements instead of maybe find element. I don't know, right? I haven't looked at it, but that's how you have to kind of
It's fine.
yeah. So you have to have how we did the calendar, right? All of them were dates. So, but we just say, okay, find elements with that kind of like a parent element of that, and how many are there, right? How many web elements are there? So in your case, you should have 5 in this case, and check the last value, right? You don't want to be satisfied with just being 5. You want to check, okay, now the last value of this is child 5, right? So that's in most cases that should be fine.
Or if you use the array list and how big is its array?
Size.
Yes.
Yeah, you can-
I
Yeah,
see
you
that-
can check the size. You can check the size, but if you want to go another layer, right? I mean, what if the last value is, somehow got screwed up? If you want to make your test case more strong or validations much more, um, you know, precise, then you can add another layer of logic. But if you don't, if you just check the size, that should be fine for what we are doing.
Because always you change size.
Right.
If you put the 5, size change. If you
Yeah.
put 3, size
Yeah. Make sense? Okay. Now, what else was the challenging part here? Are you guys?
It was in the sense, yeah, there was different methods like to do it. When one is you validate the model, then you go into the calendar, or you just add day 1 to the calendar.
Yeah.
Set keys, do that.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna continue to give you guys this kind of test,
Yeah.
right? It's just you got to get comfortable. I mean, this is what you do every day at work, and if we don't know how to do these things, it's gonna be tough. Like, there's no way I can feed that to you, right? And I wish I was that easy, but it's not. So we have to practice this. So just kind of keep putting him into different kind of positions and see how you react to it. So let's try something new today. A new test scenario that I have to do, and you guys can start working on it. We'll spend like maybe half an hour or 40 minutes. You can kind of work on it, and then we'll go over it. We'll probably do it together, right? So this is the test scenario. What I want you to do. You go to Expedia. There's another site. It's just these sites are crazy, right? It's a lot of elements there. It's very complex. So when you go to Expedia.com, I want you to click on flights, right? Okay, that part is very easy, right? But then what I want you to do is something like you start typing, let's say new arc, and then you see how I suggested a bunch of elements here, and I want you to select JFK from that list, right? So I want you to type part of that text, right, like a New York, and then based on what is auto-populated, I want you to select JFK from this, right? And that's fine. I just want you to do that. Now, what this does is it's called autocomplete or auto-suggestion. It's a very common functionality now that whoever has, so we have to know how to automate that. But before we get to automate, let's just kind of think of it as pseudocoding, right? How would you guys take that approach? Like, what would you do? Like, what can you think of something like before you even think of coding? Like, even if you have to design the test, right, or your script, right? What would you do, Rabu?
We're typing in something to find a locator for that.
Right. Okay. So we find the locator for the text field,
Okay.
right?
Send the text in.
Okay. So perfect. So we go here, and what's he's saying is we'll just type this, right? So that will get me the new list, whatever that was, and
Give it
then
a few seconds.
yeah.
Throw in a few seconds. Let it show up. And take those elements, and I guess we can iterate through it to find the JFK and then select JFK.
Yeah, that's it, right?
Iterate, or maybe you could just go down as many times.
Well, then it can go into infinite loop, right? So I mean, you can go, but then you have to iterate through it, right? So what Rob was saying is that, hey, well, you still have to find an element. That's that's another annoying part of that, right? But let's say we find that we got to figure element is something you can figure out. The logic is what I really am concerned about. So we we get all entire list, and now I have a list of suggested airports, right? and I look for the one maybe that contains John F. Kennedy or equals to John F. Kennedy, whatever you want to do, right? And if it finds it, click on it, and I'm done with it, right? So that's what pretty much our pseudocoding is. Go to Expedia.com, click on flights, type New York on the text field, grab this list and iterate through it and find John F. Kennedy. And if it finds John F. Kennedy, then click on it. All right. So let's just take like about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to do this. And once you're done, we'll do it together, and then we'll do another task and continue to do tasks from now on. Okay. Um, any questions from online?
Yeah, Mohammed,
What's up?
I guess just like with everyone else in the class, like, uh, in terms of choosing a date, like the task was that like find out tomorrow's date. So like, that was a bit easy in terms of like navigating through Element. But let's say you were adding like 30 days, so that means you would have to navigate to the right side of the calendar, to the
Yeah.
July. So that part I wasn't able to figure out. So like if you can at least just show us one more time like how to navigate through the X path. Yes, like we were told like by default that we have to use the axis like and the following method, but I was having some issues with it. Not sure if everyone else is having it. So,
So you're saying, so you have dates here, right?
yeah.
If you if you were to select which date,
So let's say I add like 30 days from now, so that would be like July 5th. So like how do I navigate to July section of it, like in terms of choosing
oh,
a
I see.
expert?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you just have to kind of like play around with the XPath. Okay, let
yeah,
me see if I can find the XPath for you. All
yeah.
right. But meantime, work on this one and let me play around with that XPath. All right. The homework, right? I don't know if you guys. I want to kind of run this through and make you. I want to make sure that you guys did it right. I don't know if Deepak and Asan may have caught it or not caught it on the review, but let's. I want to see your feedback of how you did this because he brought up a good scenario and maybe we may have missed it. So the question was, I wanted you to select tomorrow's date, right? So can someone walk me through how did you select tomorrow's date? Hmm?
We select today's date and
Plus one, right? That's how you get tomorrow's date, right? But how did you store all this value into an array? So how did you know that?
I created a date format, then I created an instance of the calendar, then add current date, that's day one. Then I took that in this XPath, I cleared the field, and then I added that day by send keys.
Oh, so you
That's
you
how
dynamically keep adding the
I
XPath.
just day, yeah, check-in day as day one, and then the same thing I do for checkout day.
Okay. So you
How I
you are changing the XPath based on the current day, based on the day. Okay, so that's good approach.
That's one.
That's one approach. That's actually pretty stable. That's not bad.
Because this accepts the send keys, but then that's what Deepak told me when I showed him my code on Saturday.
Right.
So he said you should actually go through the date digit calendar and then try and validate the month, then get into the days, do it that way. But this, since it accepts send keys and clear,
Yeah, no, that's fine. Oh, you were sending it here?
yes.
Oh no, I don't want you to do that. That's bad.
wrong.
That's wrong.
what
I thought you're dynamically writing the XPath, which
No.
is fine too. But that's fine. No, that's not what the test scenario is. We are assuming the user is going to use the calendar. Okay, how often do you use a text field if we have a calendar? So it's more of a user's. So yes, it might work, but that's not what we want to do, right? Anyone selected from the calendar? How did you do it?
I find both box and I get every element
Okay.
and I
So, but did you get every element for both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both.
All right.
And I check the month, if month equals current month,
Mm-hmm.
go select tomorrow's date and send to checkout.
Now, so here's the problem, right? Tomorrow's date is fine, right? So let's say if it's today's 5th, it's going to select 6, right? Because that's the first occurrence of 6 it's going to hit in your array. But we have multiple values, right? Because you have a 6 here and you have a 6 there. So let's say if your date falls into the next month, if 7 days from tomorrow falls into the next month, and if you iterate through it, it's going to always select from this month, right? So let's say 7 days from tomorrow is the 9th, right? Let's just assume a number, but then when you the way your logic is right now, it's going to select this Sunday, because it doesn't. I mean, you calculated that yes, that the 7 days from tomorrow is July 9th, but now it's going to, because your array only keeps the literal values, right? It's just going to keep 1 to 30 and then 1 to 31. So it has about 61 values, but there are some duplicates, right? So it's good with current date and tomorrow's date. But when you have to select 10 days from tomorrow or 7 days from tomorrow, well, it may work for, like, again, it may work like that. I'm not saying, but there are edge cases here, right? Now, if it's working and you don't know how it's working, we have a problem too, right? We have to know, because my question is that if you say 7 days from tomorrow, and if it's 5th, then it's always going to come select this 5th again, because your array doesn't know that, right? So anyone else were able to thought about that scenario?
Each date element has its own unique class value.
Nice. Okay.
So you can create a string
Mm-hmm.
and then you can put that into XPath,
Right.
and then it will automatically find that.
So you can dynamically update the XPath
Exactly.
based on. So that's
So like June 7th would be 2019-6- whatever the date was.
okay.
I have yet to fully programming in.
So
but,
see, the cool
Yeah,
thing
that-
about is data date, right?
yeah, that-
So that value, we can dynamically write that out, right? But that's one way to do it too. I mean, this approach in the past, student has used that approach as well, right? But even if, let's say, even if we had this array, even if we put all 61 values into one array, we can write a logic here, right? We can somehow write some sort of logic to make sure it doesn't select the first value it finds, right? So can someone think of that, right? Can someone think of this and say, hey, if I need to select 7 days from tomorrow, and 7 days from tomorrow is 5th, right? How do I select second value from that array? Because that's all you have to figure that out. Because you already got that array, you just have to find the logic to make sure that I'm doing the second value, not the first value.
So I mean, if the value is like, let's say, 29, just make sure that, um,
You sort the list
Yeah.
and get the second occurrence.
no, I mean, value greater than 29, value greater than 29, it can't be greater than 30.
Okay.
Yeah, so you start from the beginning.
Well,
F1.
they're string,
Yeah,
so you can compare them though.
I mean, we can.
Well, we can
parse them.
convert. We can make them into an integer, right?
Parse them.
Can other people chime in here? Like, how would you do it? How would you do it, you guys? How would you do it? Who you texting? Never mind. How would you select the second value?
Maybe the month you can validate.
Okay, that's one way to figure out.
If the month is this, and then select the date of that particular.
I was talking to Nirmal, and he had a further question on top of that. It's like, what if we did 30 plus days?
It doesn't matter how many days. It's always going to be 61 values. I mean, if you
No.
do 30, then you're going to another month. Right, but we can handle that later, right? But just to go into that next calendar, there is an edge case here, right?
There is 84 value because each part they have 42 value. Empty one they also.
But that's
can,
fine. Empty ones you don't
count
care
it.
about them, right? Yes, if you look
I
at the
figure out
rows.
like this: if month equals this month, select this. If I need to other month, I change the month, and it's
So you have to write some sort of logic saying, if 7 days from tomorrow falls in within the same month, then you loop through starting from zero index. If it falls in the next month, you just loop through from the end of the array, right? That's one hacky way to do it, right? So these are the kind of stuff I want you guys to figure it out, right? It's not about getting the homework right. I don't care about that, right? It's about figuring out how can I solve these problems, right? Kind of like think outside the box a little bit. And I know it's a little bit harder, but you have to kind of practice them, and figure out those issues and solve them. See, like we kind of came up with like almost 3, 4 different ways of doing that, right? And long as you kind of figure out a one way, but your code has to be stable, right? And also being able to foresee these problems, right? Like we ran into other issues last time when we ran. Yeah, remember, like it was selecting from future month or whatever, right? We had to go back a month. So that was one logic. Now, if we run your code today, you're not gonna hit that logic, right? Because we are fine until we hit end of the month, right? But now you have another logic where, what if your 7 days falls into the next month, right? I'll make sure that it's selecting from next month values instead of the first month value, right? So these are the kind of things I need you guys to kind of work with, and you can kind of see how your test scenario works out, right? Now, believe me, if you are able to solve these problems, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a trick about interviews and stuff, and how our students are able to do really well in the market. This batch, especially, almost like 7 or 8 got a job right within 2 weeks period of time, and it's 1 or 2 interviews, and it's not one company. It's Walmart, Target, Verizon, like name of companies, like it's just various companies. So it's definitely not luck, right? I just want you to say that. Now, granted, they're good, just like you guys. They work hard. They did most of the work, but at the same time, the direction was this. I like for you guys to be really good technically, right? Any scenario, you should have that mindset that, hey, give me a test scenario, I'm going to automate it, I'll figure it out. That has to be the mindset going forward, right? And you have to figure this out. You have to work on it, struggle through it, fight through it, and then solve the problem, right? Not just kind of sit on it. And then you'll see when you go to an interview, even if you don't know anything about Selenium, nobody cares, right? Oh, do you know how to do a right click with Selenium? If you say no, I don't know how to do that, it doesn't matter. That's not what they're, a really good interviewer. That's not what they're looking into. They're looking into, can you take a problem and solve it, right? And that's what we're gonna figure out. I mean, next 1 month and a half, every day we are going to do these little exercises, and you guys are doing good, right? But you have to keep this up, and some of you guys are a little behind, but you have to keep solving problems. You can't just become a programmer by just looking at a code and copying it and just doing basic scenario. No, you have to, whenever you see an edge case and it's broken there, how can I fix it, right? And that's what I'm looking for from now on, right? I know all of you guys can automate a test scenario, right? That's not the goal anymore. Now we have established that you're good, you can do these things. But the next step is finding out those edge cases and solving them. Even when I give you a test scenario, I may not have covered all the edge cases, right? But you have to find those edge cases and being able to solve them as well along the way. So you're QAing the test scenario as well as covering all the edge cases to make sure there's no leakage, all right? So that's if you haven't done that, please go home, try to figure this out based on our discussion that we had. And then, like I said, Nirmal had another scenario. What if it's 30 days from tomorrow, right? We can also figure. I mean, once you know how to solve these problems, you can continuously figure out. And if the next 30 days is not within the next month, you just hit the next button and figure. Select it from the subsequent month. Can you stay in a hotel for 30 days? I think that's. I don't. I think you have to. Some places, maybe like.
Those extended days.
All right.
Can we do one of those things in class sometimes? Like maybe if you want to try it today and then Thursday next week.
Yeah, I mean we can
I
definitely.
tried doing it, it drove me crazy in that book. I was about to break my laptop.
No, don't break your laptop.
So that's what. So hopefully, if we can do the 7-day scenario and the 30-day, we can figure it out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. But I also like for you guys to try something. Like this is not going to be where.
I tried.
Yeah, yeah,
You
because.
don't see my dogs on this?
um, but most importantly, do you understand? Like based on our conversation today, do you get what I'm looking for, right? So that's kind of what I want you to try one more time. Okay. Well, Thursday we have a midterm, right? So maybe we can have one of those questions midterms. But yeah, Deepak is going to be here, and you guys can kind of just do your midterm, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so we are doing really good with time, the pace of the class. So we'll have a lot of time to exercise, do more projects and things like that, do little exercises, and um, also maybe we start doing a little bit of algorithm stuff this time. I've never done that with previous classes, but if we have some time, things like binary search or linear search and things that you don't want to kind of deal with, right? But maybe we may have like a couple of classes, we can try doing that because those kind of it allows you to think, right? It allows you to kind of take a problem and you can kind of figure out a way to solve it. And like the core computer science classes that we tend to skip, but those are sometimes important. All right. Next thing. Also, like whenever we're learning Selenium, we're not going to go over everything that the Selenium has to offer. What you have to do is Selenium Java doc. So over the weekend, whenever you get chance, where is the Java doc for it? Okay. You see, so it has a lot of stuff, right? Like I say, if we end up just the goal is not to memorize Selenium, right? Knowing where to find the information. So if you have time, if you want to, you might get lost, reading that because it's just too much information. Now everything that you when you go into a work, you're not going to use everything from Selenium. Think of like date, right? You don't know everything that a date has to offer, but whenever you have to deal with anything related to date, you know where to go. Like let's say tomorrow you have to automate something based on time zones, right? Okay, you know what? Based on California, I want to do something. So you have to set your script in a specific time zone. Does that make sense? So, but you're not dealing with that right now, but you know where to go for it. Okay, well, let me deal with calendar. Let me deal with date. Let me see how people are dealing with time zones. So, same thing with Selenium. Don't expect to learn all this stuff here. It's not worth it, right? So, but whenever we have a test scenario and it deals with something related to browser related actions, you go here, you figure it out, and see some of the examples of others are doing it, and look into the scripts. All right. So I'll just share this link with you. So whenever you get a chance, you can kind of read through this stuff. And it's very important that we learn how to read engineering documentations because that's how some of the engineering documentation is, unfortunately, right? So it's not always clear, but as you know a little bit of information, it can kind of get to you. All right, let's try something else now. So let's say I have two web elements. Username equals to. Now, how was the feedback from the homework? Would you guys like to see, and be open about this? Like when you get a feedback from Deepak and Asan, how is that happening? It's been helping.
Yeah.
Okay. Like is that what you, or would you like to see something more, or it's fine the way it is? Okay. If anything you want to kind of discuss about that specific thing, if you want to speak in private, that's fine. I want to make sure that we're on the same page of what you're getting. All right. Find element by ID. It doesn't matter, right? That's not it. And then we'll say so there are some, I wouldn't say special actions or whatever, but there are certain actions that so click is an action, send key is an action, but these are part of your driver, right? But there are some actions that is not always performed. It's very once in a while you have to perform certain actions like double click. I mean we don't do double clicks anymore, right? Or context clicks, right? Like the right portion of your mouse click, whatever, right side of your mouse, and then drag and drop, mouse over, things that you don't do every day, right? So they what WebDriver did is they wrapped around into another class, and then WebDriver obviously inherited that class, right, or extended it. So that class is called actions, right? And you're going to make sure that you're getting it from Selenium. When we start doing mobile stuff, they have something similar as well. So let's say actions equals to new actions, and you have to pass in your driver. Make sense? So in this case, our driver would be, your constructor would be the get driver object. So now we can perform a lot of different things, right? So we can say, hey, actions dot, and then there's a lot of things like, I mean, like I said, these are very easy stuff you guys could figure out, but double click and you pass on an element that you want to double click on, right? So let's say login button, and we'll double click on login button, right? And if you say actions dot click and hold, like sometimes you may have to you want to probably hold it for a little bit for whatever reason, and then it pops up an image or whatnot, right? And same thing, you can just say okay, login button, click and hold on login button. um, you can also do actions dot context click. So you know how sometimes you might want to do a context click, right? You see how we did the right click, right? So if you want to do that, you can use this. You go into element and then you context click that. Um, yeah, I'm recording. Actions dot, if you want to do drag and drop, right? So let's say drag and drop. You want to drag an element from, let's say you want to drag this element to somewhere else, right? So you know how you have some features where you drag some sort of data to another bucket, right? Whatever may be the case, right? Some shopping carts kind of stuff. Like I said, things that you don't run into every day, right? That's why they wrap this around another class called actions. So which will be your source? So let's say I want to drag email into password, right? So I'll say username, and I want to drop it in password. So you can do something like that, drag and drop, right? Um, Also, we can also perform keys, like the keyboard, like tab, shift, all of those as well, right? So you can say something. Well, that's not necessarily part of actions, but you can also do, you see how we get the text field, and we can say send keys like regular how we've been doing it, but here keys dot, and then you have all these enums that you can use, tab, add, alt, whatever, right? So now I don't want you to use this at all unless it's like the last source of way of doing it, right? There was a company where I was consulting for, like this dude, he wrote the entire framework using using the keyboard, and it was so flaky, and he was just doing everything through tab. So he'll go to tab, he'll tab into a text field, and then type like whatever the text is. He'll say keys dot a, keys dot b, and then it was good. I mean, we got the job, but at the same time, so don't do that. This is just for like in certain cases, if you cannot really get to an element, you go to the neighboring one and you can tap to it and then do like an enter or whatever, right? But don't use this stuff unless you have. You always want to do it something that is stable, right?
One question. So, for example, if you want to select a couple of things from a drop
Yeah, in that case, it will be a checkboxes, right?
But you seem like there are even the highlighted
So in those cases, maybe, yeah, actually, this is a really good use case you just thought about, right? So yeah, in that case, you can probably use, tab,
you
and
select a couple of options.
so you select very one of them, right? Whatever one that you want to start selecting from, right? And either you tap through it, or you hold on to that one and you select the last value, right? And it depends how they build it. I can't answer that for you right now, right? But if you see that goes back to the concept of knowing how to solve the problems, right? So if you don't know how to solve the problems, then this job becomes a little bit harder, right? Because you can't just kind of take away what you learn here and expect the jobs to be exactly what it is, right? It's okay. No, this is going to be around the same area of Muhammad taught, but it's always going to be slightly different. Then it's like we're learning loop from the book the way it is. It's not always going to be. You have to improvise a little bit. So same thing with software engineering. You have to kind of find your own way, but always come up with the scenario. So like let's say if this is a scenario that comes to your head, find a feature online that does that, right? And then just try to automate it over the weekend. See, and that's how you're going to kind of start gaining experience and solving problems. All right, so action has a lot of good stuff, right? Let's do something then. Let's take a break, right? After the break, what we're gonna do is, I think that's the last day of, obviously, yeah, that's the last day of Ramadan. So I think, you know, you guys will have more energy next time. But for now, we'll take a break about 10 to 15 minutes, and then once you come back, there's a task, and you can start working on this. And for those of you who has to eat, that's fine. I want you to see if you can automate this scenario, and then like as usual, we'll go over it together. Now, this is a site that I really like because it has all the features that you're talking about. A lot of the JavaScript front end engineers uses. So you see how it has a product, and I want you to kind of hover over it, right? And then just click on whatever, right? So visual designer, maybe I'm looking for a visual designer, right? And you can kind of go here and do that. So this is what I want to do. Hover over a product, right? Um, I'll send it on Slack. You hover over this, and then you click on visual designer. Make sense? So I want you to use actions library here, kind of something you figure it out and see how how you can think of this, and then we'll go over it and once we come back from the break. Use move to element. There is something called move to element. So actions dot move to element. Um,
So I've wrote an XPath that selects all these elements,
mhm.
and basically when I run it, it's what I want to do. I want to store it like
That's a
text.
too long expat.
I'm just practicing.
Okay,
So
that's good.
yeah,
But you got the feel for it now, right?
yeah. So I don't understand why when I storing it into string, I'm getting the text right. So here is the text.
No, you can't do that.
Why?
It's not a single element. How is that a single element? It's not a single element. It's elements.
So it should be list of strings.
You have to do no. It should be list of. Let me see the last line here. No, once you get to that point, you cannot use get text. You have to store them into an element, web elements,
Okay.
and then iterate through each one and get text, get text, get text, get text.
So I should reiterate through.
Yeah, because you cannot directly, web elements cannot read, because think about what you're asking, right? It's like you're asking, let me show you an example. Because it doesn't make sense what you're asking, so that the script doesn't understand that. So it's like you're saying, find me all the elements, right? These ones, right? And do get text. It doesn't know which one to get the text for, right? So what you have to do is first get all the web elements into a list and go through each one and get text. So you can say results, right? Dot get text. If it equals to def, okay, click on it, or go to, or if not, then go to the next one, next one. Look, something similar to what we've written. You're not doing anything different than how we did it. We're saying, hey, get me all of the elements with the class name result items. Stores into a list. These are all well elements. And then now go through each one of those and get me the text that contains John F. Kennedy, and then click on it.
Okay. Will you share this on the Slack?
I can share it to you. It's fine.
Thank you.
But you get the point?
Yes.
All right.
I think. Well, I will get it when when it will work.
Class and result items. These all come under one category. Mohammed, I have one question. I was just totally intrigued by Nirmal's question about the class. So what would be the logic? Like you form an alliance for the 60 days, and then how do you do it? I still don't know that.
So the locator that we're using, it gives me all the dates. It doesn't understand which month it is or not, right? So you have to figure out, what is the
If
rate
it
of
was
that?
string array, it's a string array, right?
Yeah. So somehow you have to figure out and understand, hey, if the days from today, the 7 days from today, does that fall within my month? Does that fall within current month? If answer is yes, then you do whatever you do. It's going to select the right one. If not, you look through from the end instead of from the beginning. So that's kind of where or you do what he does. He just updates the date. So there is another attribute which is this locator called data date or something, and you can update the string. So the express is keep updating it based on the date. But I like that one because you can have to think about it.
I guess
Rahul?
One thing, okay.
How to found this like glass.
I found it convenient. Yes, because that's what this element, right? The drop down whatever.
Yeah, you found this one, right?
No, so I put all of this into a web element list, and then
I
I
got this, right? I got this, but and I found this.
okay, but does that extract give you all of the airports?
Right? They all
Okay. So can you iterate through it? Or is that working?
it's not working. You can't say
So,
what
so,
web
so, so, do this. As soon as you find it, system print out, place it, drop down the size, we'll do that. Okay, all that size. Alright, come on. So let's see if the size comes out as 10, that means it's I mean, every like oh yeah, I otherwise it would not work. And you edit right all the time. Where's how do you do that? You highlight your expense. I didn't know
but I can but this it's already knows the size of the
no, I was going over this Expedia one.
Oh.
No, where he had it right.
He wrote like the longest expert I see.
but I'm
But it works.
I know, I'm just messing with you.
All you had to put like rent that speed for like a second.
Yeah, and
it
then,
worked.
yeah, so that's what my but the expert, I'm learning about the child
no, I totally understand.
and then you can get how you run this class name itself. So I wish how
No, you just have to look into the elements. I don't use that tool. I just go through the DOM. It's a little bit easier.
how can you find this class?
No, because I used to be a front end developer. So I know like a lot of those things. Like I don't use these tools to find it. But this is easier to kind of convenient way to do it. So don't worry about it. I go to the view source, like I pick up the source file, and then I just go through how they wrote it.
Also, we have no chance to figure out.
You could, but it's little. It'll take a little bit more experience. Right?
This is definitely better. I wish I could do that. I didn't get
But right, longest those experts are working. But you want to keep it. You want to keep them. Shrink them as much as possible. But sometimes you have to have the longest.
figuring it wrong and how to navigate around because I think it's helpful to know how you can. Yeah.
You have to go in the
I think it's window, get driver, window.
Get there with
Manage, yeah, get driver dot manage, window dot manage. You done? You're working? Okay, that's fine. Let me see the are you ready for next set here? Why don't you just do link time?
I did think. I did my visual designer. I did the products link.
Yeah, product is a link, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to write the long. And listen, expert is the last thing.
Yeah.
It's not the first choice.
Everything that's in the box, I
Or you guys?
I'm doing this visual designer link next.
Maybe you have to wait like 2 seconds. Because it's maybe trying to click before it's.
Yeah, sometimes
If I want just a full word over element, and it's not showing up here, whatever.
What do you mean?
So I'm not actually doing it, I'm just putting
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the one because you have to do action dot move. Yeah.
This is
Oh,
what you
okay.
get on there.
Yeah, and then that's in the other one.
Okay.
And that's it. We'll just go there and see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, no, no. Yeah.
So,
And now that's the product.
but this element is not this element.
No, that's later.
Okay.
Because first you have to go there to display that.
Yes.
Right? So once you go there, wait for like 2 seconds and then click on the
Okay.
right? And yeah, I think you have to do build perform. That's well, you're not clicking on it. Or are you? You are clicking on it. But I don't want. Why are you using this click? No, because a click still makes me. Yeah, try regular click and see what happens. Yeah, that click inside of action is problem. Just do regular click. So you could just do web designer dot click and it will work. Run it and see what happens. No, it's not even going there. It's not going to progress.
Yeah.
But
It's like the
right? Another thing, and it's not so that you say that you mistake it.
connection things not working, I'm trying to
The problem was I could hear that element and then I just changed it roughly and I assumed that it should then it should work because I want to add the text at the end to store it in string, but it's not working. So I have to define string, blah blah blah. We got the driver, but
Yeah, that's fine.
when I refine everything.
So right after move to element, just do build dot perform. That's it. Thinking.
It's a hidden element.
Did your friend come to one of my workshops? You remember you mentioned the other day you hit it on Saturday? So the class is getting full. So if you're interested, then you can yeah, and that's two things that. How are you? Oh, good. But how's the homework? Did you? You were not able to solve it.
I understand very well what's the major case. I understand step by step, but to do the homework is very difficult.
Why though? Which part? Is it finding the locator or breaking the requirement or?
I find the locator, I go by Google Files, I click it here, and for like that, where is it? But maybe the plan everything, the
Right.
next structure, like step by step, that's stuck here, and also cause the timing, because need a lot of time.
Yeah. What are you doing now? What do you do now? Do you have time now or are you busy with work?
Today,
No, just general.
I'm working.
You have to find time. It's gonna get more because you gotta get. See, you have to get through these problems, right, and solve them. So that then it'll get easier and easier and easier,
Yeah,
right? Because once you solve it, next time you find similar problem, it's easy,
yeah.
right?
I understand. Watch video, I watch video,
Yeah.
understand whatever you explain, what's the step, one by one, all that. But I found in homework some trick.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well, now you can eat, so you have more energy to kind of work on.
okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the question that
The base stack button.
Yeah, we're gonna work on it and figure it out.
you did that.
How do I get?
Yes.
Create
I
what I was saying,
want
the
these
dy-
to
the
get
dynamic
like it's fine.
mock value. Yeah, for extra. If you do that, then I think it's gonna be really easy. Just
Ah.
maybe, yeah, you just click on that button and then the what page will pull the new elements.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, they first you have to find that element.
For myself. How do I?
And then you filter it.
He does, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like just go.
Okay.
I did the perform the products that
What's the left side of the face?
I haven't done it.
That's nice.
I guess the left side is more logical, the right side would be maybe more colorful. Right? That's the shapes and fingers come from.
No, it's fine. What do you want to put on?
Okay. They finish eating.
Then we have a problem, right? What if they allow functions at this time?
Nirmal, did you finish the work? Mira, Nirmal, Kako?
I figured out the logic. I'm just struggling with the XPath. So, but
Oh, why are
here's
you
what.
using XPath for that? You could just use link text products. It's a link, right?
True. Yes, I've been working with XPath a lot lately by default.
Sometimes we skip on the easiest way of doing it.
I was just trying to find the proper like the locator.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go over it real quick. It's actually a pretty easy one. I think you had to maximize the window, right? Because if it was collapsed, it had a hamburger button. So I'll do this. So very first thing we're doing, we're maximizing the window, right? The reason for maximizing it is if the window is, let's say, open at this, the view is it's called breakpoints. So all of our web page, most of the web pages that you're going to be working on, they may have breakpoints. Like at a different breakpoint, we may want to show different view, right? If you open this in a 27-inch monitor, maybe a certain view. If you open this in a 14-inch monitor, we want to give you a different view, right? If you open this in a mobile, we want to give you a different view, right? So as you can see, when we shrink this whole list kind of formed into a hamburger button, right? Like a sandwich button. And then if you click on it, you can access that. So the whole experience is different now. So that's also very important. We have to also build those breakpoints, right? And and that's the problem that we'll deal with it later, not today. But we can set our browser into a specific dimension, x, y, like what is the dimension that we want to open on, right? And then we can create an object called dimensions, and then based on your companies, you have to write scripts for that because it's slightly different, right? Because so now what you have to do is you may have an extra step, and you have to say, hey, if the breakpoint equals to this, then then you have to perform a different workflow for that. But like I said, we'll deal with this in our final project. Um, but what I really wanted you to do is go hover over products and then click on Visual Designer, right? So it's very simple. We maximize it to make sure it has a full view, so we can get the top header. And then we go through web element, get driver, find element, link text. We can use link text. A lot of you guys looking for XPath, which is fine, but try to use the easier one, the most clean one that you have available. And then we're creating actions.move element. We just have to do build.perform. Like, okay, I'm done with it here, because sometimes you can move to, maybe you first move to one element, then to another element, whatever may be the case. But this tells the compiler that, okay, I want to perform this action that I just, build up here. Waiting for 2 seconds just to, making sure that it's moving there. And then clicking on it, and then also waiting on it for another 2 seconds. So if we go here, I don't have this website, but that's how you would write that script. Any questions?
I didn't get the build part again. Why
So this is to like the way action wants us. I didn't know that we had to do this, right? But what they want us to do from now is that you move to an element and then you have to say, okay, hey, I am building this piece of code, right? And then I am performing that as well, okay? Because you can build it and perform it later. Where it's like, so let's say if you build it, let's see if it returns a data type. So you can store that into an object called action, right? And then perform it. So it's pretty cool actually. So let's say if you do action instead of actions, it's an action, right? And we can do something like what is that? Product, right? Equals to. Then we can stop at build, and you may want to perform it later, right? So we'll take this whole thing out, and then you can do product dot perform. So it's just, it's just convenient where you have more control over how you want to do things, right? But I won't do that unless if you're reusing it. It's no point of storing that into a variable and make it more complex than it needs to. All right. What is the next thing we should be learning? The next thing that we should be learning is called alerts. Oh, yeah. Let's do alerts and then we'll do JavaScript execution. Uh, Did Vishal get a job offer? Buying smoothie for everyone.
I'm treating it. Come on, yeah, come on, wish me sing for me. Happy birthday.
All right. So now that we got here, let's say if you're dealing with alerts, right? There might be a test scenario, right? I want you to go to this web page and click on try it, right? And then you get these nasty, ugly pop-ups, right? So now we get pop-ups all the time. How do we deal with them, right? We can accept them, we can dismiss them, or we can read a text from them, or we can maybe type on it, right? So Selenium has a built-in functionality that deals with that, right? So for us to do this, we have to locate this element, right? And then click on it and see how we can deal with this stuff. So let's say click function elements. Where is your Chrome path? Where did I expect? Right, so that's your XPath. So let's try this out. Let's deal with alerts. Let me steady. Yes, I can send you the link. All right. Now that we got to this part, so we can say something like get driver dot find element by dot xpath. You can just copy this from here.
We don't have
We don't have link.
I sent the link
No.
on Slack.
No.
Oh, I sent it to Nemo. Okay, now I sent you the xpath. It's getting crazy in here. No, not. Okay, so that's that. And then we'll say click, right? And let's see what happens. Let's run this code. And the foo is just like kind of like a dummy name. So don't do. You can do whatever you want to do with it. Okay. See what happened? There's a big problem happened, right? It says no such element was found. With button contains text. Try it. Right? But that was the XPath that we had. The reason it didn't find because this page was different. It was built slightly different way, and you're going to see that a lot within these new modern web pages. And I'll explain it to you what I mean by that. So when we build JavaScript web page, do you guys remember how we handle window handles? Can someone explain me? If we have multiple tabs, how do we move around? What is the technology behind it? Like, what is kind of the um,
Window has a unique ID.
okay? Every window has a unique ID.
Yeah, and index 0 and 1.
So index 0 would be your landing window, whatever,
Yes.
right? And if you want to move to the next one,
You have to.
you have to switch to that ID, so to speak, and go right. So that's a great concept. So even within the page, you have something called frames, right? Like an iframe, right? So iframe are also kind of works like I don't want to give you the example of a tab, but because it's totally different. So in here, I have two different iframe. My landing iframe is like right here, right? But then I want to move to the right one and then click on it. So by default, WebDriver doesn't know that. A lot of time, you may go into a web page where you're performing certain actions, and it pops up like a big frame, and then the background is blurred out, right? Like a grayed out or whatever, and it focuses on that specific frame that you're working on, right? So you get to see that a lot in this, modern technologies. But what I really want you to understand is that we have to, if you have multiple frames, you cannot just find element and perform actions. Does that make sense? You have to switch to that frame and then performing actions, right? So how do we switch to a frame? Well, it's very easy because you cannot build a frame without a unique ID. So that's by default, whoever is a JavaScript developer here, he has to give a unique ID to it, right? So in this case, you see where it says iframe? Right? So that's, let's see. So you see how I frame and I selected the right side of the frame, right? When I selected this and I highlighted everything on the right, right? So that's, we have to take this ID first, we have to switch it to that frame first, and then perform the action. So we're kind of learning a few things here, handling alert, but that is separate from alert, right? But this is a good, and it's not by intention. I was trying to automate this scenario and then ran into iframe, right? So there might be a lot of scenarios, or well, not a lot, few here and there that might get slipped, but you have to do some research to figure out those problems. But most importantly, what you want to do is that before you go into your element, you want to do something like this: get driver dot switch to dot, and they have a built-in one called frame, right? And then here you don't have to say by.id, because by default frame, all of the frame has ID, and whoever built this frame thing probably figure having that for us. So let's say what we have to do here is we have to take iframe results and dump it in here, and that's it. Once you switch it to it, let's see if it works now. Yeah, it's fine, right? So, but it was very important that we move to a frame first before we perform. And like I said, most cases you're not going to have it. But when you look at your DOM structure, right, keep your eyes open. If it is not finding an element, see if there is something called iframe anywhere, right? And if there is an iframe, then you have to handle that first before you start working on it. All right, now let's just do the easy stuff. Once I click on, sorry, any questions here? All right, so once I click on it, how do we handle alerts? Well, alert works the same way. You can switch to an alert, right? You have to tell your driver, hey, go away from the web page and move to an alert, right? So we have to say something like get driver dot get switch to dot alert, right? So it's already built in for us, right? And if you want to accept the alert, it doesn't matter if it's okay, yes, whatever. That's just a mask, a display name, right? But under the hood, alert can only have accept, dismiss, get text, and send keys, right? So if you were to do any of those action, you just say, you can just say dismiss. Like, I am declining whatever it's telling me to do, right? And then we can kind of keep pressing this stuff, right? So we can say, and then we click on it again, and we can accept it. Accept alert. And then here we can. Oh, it's been a while. And then we'll. Get text. So you can also print out what's inside of it, right? Any questions so far? So anything you want to do with, whenever you have to deal with an alert, you can do something like that, right?
What if you have to save a file? Like you enter a text and like let's say if you have a link and you click on it, say save as. So you enter let's say PDF file name and then click save.
What is it?
So like just how you're showing that alert has only limited options that you can play around with. So like let's say you go to a link and it's a PDF link that as soon as you click on the link it says that okay save as.
Yeah, but that might not be an alert from a web page. It might be an alert from your Mac or your Windows. Does that make sense? So like, let's say if you do this, I know what you're saying. So if you said save page as, right? Where did this go? Or let's do the easy one. So you see how this is not part of a web page. This is part of your Mac, and if you wanted to automate that, That's a separate. We're not gonna be using alert for that. We'll be using something else. But if it's an alert, it's going to be accept, or even if it's a save as, that might be your display value, but under the hood it might be called accept. Does that make sense? Because whenever they're building an alert, those are the options they kind of populate, right? Few of them, and you have an option to mask it how you want to mask it, but under the hood they're all either accept or dismiss, unless you're custom writing the alert. In that case, the alert might not work. If you're custom writing it, then you might have to use the specific locator. Make sense, Nirmal?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So let's just run it one more time. Yeah. This is presented. Okay. Any questions on alerts?
Can we also look if alerts are visible or
Yeah. I mean,
display?
I don't know if they have by default. You may have to. Let me see.
Like if element
Yeah.
is visible.
So you have to do something like this. So it's going to return an alert for you, right? So when you do dismiss, it's a void. There is no actions, right? But when you say switch to dot alert, right? Then you might have to write a logic saying, hey, if alert true, then do something, otherwise dismiss it, right? Things like that. Always try to see what they're returning, right? That way we have more control over what we want to do. More stuff or
Yeah.
yeah? What is it? Yeah. Yeah, it worked, Vishal. Should we do another one or what do you guys think? Yeah? Let's do one more. There's something called this is like the most garbage code, but sometimes you need to work with this one. Okay. We'll do one together and then we can you can do some classwork maybe. This is a very interesting class. So there may be time where front end technologies are pretty much use JavaScript, right? I mean anything that runs on browser, we use one or other flavor of some sort of JavaScript, right? That's what browser understands: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Even our WebDriver under the hood uses a lot of the communication with how JavaScript is built and how they build their browsers, but we don't have to get into that. But there might be some actions like scroll. You may have to scroll on a page. I mean, we don't, by default, WebDriver already built this within their method called like send keys and click. Under the hood, they're automatically scrolling and doing all of that, but there might be exceptions where it doesn't work, right? Everything doesn't like kind of work out of the box. So there might be a scenario where you may have to scroll for elements to be visible, right? Because a lot of these new web pages, responsive web pages, is that only if you scroll, your elements kind of starts to show up. Does that make sense, right? So, we're not loading everything up. Only if you scroll, then the new videos are displaying. Like if you look at like YouTube and stuff like that, only when you're scrolling it, and then there's like this. So yes, it's within the same DOM, but it's not visible, right? So we may have to. So if you look for an element that requires 3 different scroll before your element gets activated, how can we do that, right? It's not gonna work with the approach that we're doing. So I'm just saying scroll is one type of thing, but there's like many other cases, like, well, not many, few other cases. Even like traditional click is not working. So we can write like a very garbage JavaScript code to kind of do that. So what we can do is we can send our JavaScript code through Java, right? So how can we make sure that our WebDriver thinks this is a JavaScript call coming in instead of a Java call coming in, right? So that's when we do casting. We can cast our WebDriver object with the JavaScript executor, right? What it does is it allows you to perform some JavaScript function actions with your WebDriver, okay? So that's, high level, that's pretty much what it's doing. Okay, so let's do this. So we say JavaScript executor jazz equals to our driver. Well, we have to first extend it, right? And then we say get driver. And what's the error here? So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to store our driver into JavaScript executor type, right? The only way they will allow us to do it is if we do something called casting, right? So when we do casting, now what we are telling our compiler, hey, I want this driver going forward, I want this driver to behave as a JavaScript executor. Does that make sense? Right? Do we do casting here a little bit? No. So it's kind of like, think of like human, right? And then you can be more specific. Hey, going forward, I want this human to be male. Does that make sense? So now you're kind of telling like, yeah, I understand this is sort of a human, but going forward, it's going to behave as a male, right? So you're sure of what's going to happen. Same thing with, let's say, if you can cast our animal objects, remember? So we can have an animal and we can cast it to a dog. We can cast it to a cat, right? And you can say, hey, going forward, this object is going to be dog, right? So this is what called casting. But you can downcast, you can upcast, but in this case, it's most likely they're doing a downcast. So now we can write some JavaScript stuff, right? So JavaScript, and this is anything inside of this method, right? So let's say whatever the string is, we can send a JavaScript code now, and it can perform some action. So for example, we can say document dot get element by ID login button click. So in your right mind, why would you do that if you have a click already, right? But this is a JavaScript, right? So if you're a front-end developer, you're familiar with this, is that document is your entire DOM. Does that make sense? This is your DOM. I'm saying, hey, give me the full document and look for an element ID called login button and then click on it, right? So we only do this if we really have to. If the traditional click is not working, the ones which is going to work 99% of the time. But there's 1%. If it doesn't work, you can try out this approach. All right. You can also do something like this. So let's get a web element. Element. Oh, I don't know. Username equals to get driver dot find element. Okay. So we have this web element. You can also just pass in your element and say, hey, arguments 0.click. So whatever web element that you're passing is going to perform click on it, right? If your web page needs to do this, I just feel bad for you. But it's just kind of like you're writing at one time in your base page. Let's say if your web page has a lot of those JavaScript stuff that you have to pass in. Like I said, 95% of the time, you don't have to do this. It's just that you have this little room where you may have to write some of those JavaScript stuff.
So how do we know that we have to do that?
When the main one's not working, you try different things, right? So one of the option is that. So let's say in Facebook, if we done username dot send keys and it's not working, right? And then you have to kind of take a step back and say, hey, why is it not working? You might talk to developers and this and that, and they might say, hey, traditional WebDriver is probably not gonna pass through to here. You might have to write those little JavaScript code, but you can still run them through your WebDriver. Okay. Same thing with send keys. So we can write something like this. We can say document dot give me an ID called email, uh, and then dot value equals to test@test.com, right? Same thing. So let's automate one scenario together. Well, we can probably do this. There's two different ways we can scroll on JavaScript, right? I mean, in web page. So let's say you go into a page. Do we have a scroll on Facebook? So Facebook doesn't really have a scroll. Hotels.com has it? Yeah, hotel. Perfect. So let's do hotels.com and see what happens. Oh. The pop-up thing is okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. And it's not pop-up. It's this garbage. Uh, You see how it scrolled down a little bit, right? So what's happening is a lot of time you may have to do that. So you can say window dot scroll. So the first value is horizontal values, right? If you wanted to kind of move horizontally. I mean, who builds a web page horizontally anymore, right? We don't have that bar anymore, so it's fine. But then it's kind of taking it from. So your 0, 0 is somewhere here, right? Like I think either it's somewhere here or in the corner. But anyhow, so let's say you have a 0, 0. So we're not moving the the horizontal bar, right? What we're doing is saying, hey, move down 150 pixels. So down means positive, up means negative, right? But in this case, we are moving down 150 pixels, and that's all we are doing, all right? So you can also do a scroll in a different way. Let's say if you have an element on, if you wanted to click on top destinations, right? So you can say, hey, instead of scrolling one after another, right? Because then you have to write a loop, right? Hey, do you see top destination? No. Do you see top destination now? So you're gonna have to scroll X amount of time to get there. But instead of that, we have an easier way to do this. Is you can say get driver find element login button and then argument dot zero scroll to view and then you pass in the element, right? So that whatever element it is, you can just pass that in and it will work as well. So you don't have to write that logic. Now, in web page, you don't have to use that a lot, but when we get to mobile, the whole technology is built different way. We have to do this, right? So the only way the DOM in mobile works is that it only whatever's in your screen, these are the elements your DOM understands. So only if you scroll, then the other element kind of gets populated, right? So if you have to click on something at the bottom of your page, right, then you have to write this logic. Hey, is top destination displayed? Is it false? Okay, scroll again, scroll again, scroll again until you find it and then click on it, right? So when we get to the mobile, scroll and swipe becomes very essential, whereas in web, it's pretty stable the way it is now, right? Any questions? All right. And then just few minor things to go over. If you ever trying to go forward, refresh your page, you want to go back, right? You can access this thing. Get driver dot navigate. We already used that. You can use forward, back, refresh, URLs. So like let's say if you wanted to go forward, right? You can perform those actions. You can go backward. You can also do a refresh, right? Perfect. That's it. So, I think those are if you know how to play around with this, that's pretty much what you really need to know as far as performing actions. There might be specific cases where you may have to deal with like things like dimensions, right? But we don't have to go kill ourselves learning over that right now. So dimension is like, let's say if you wanted to open a window in a specific breakpoint. Hey, I want this window to be 1300 by 850, right? So that in that case you can start your window in a specific, but right now it's just kind of opening at a default coordinate dimensions. But if you want to, so there are a lot of those actions here and there comes in, but you don't use it every day. What you're learning here is the kind of things that you use every day. But if you run into a test scenario in your final project that you have to do this, then yes, you'll figure out and kind of go from there on. What else I want to cover? So I know a lot of you already facing the issue for weight, right? You have to do 2 seconds here, 3 seconds. That's bad, right? We're going to write next time, well, next Monday, because Thursday you have the midterm. But next Monday when you come in, we'll do the WebDriver wait, right? And we'll start plugging in Cucumber into our framework. So we're gonna go back to framework. So these are kind of the things I wanted to cover. Make sure you know how to perform these actions, right? Like I said, some of them you may not even use it in the rest of the class, but as long as you have it back of your mind that hey, that's how this is being done, that's all that matters, right? But when you come Monday, I want you to go back to like second or third class when we went over the framework. Try to implement some of those test cases into your framework because we're going to redesign the framework a little bit and put Cucumber top of it, right? So that's the goal for next. Well, first we're gonna learn how to do weight, and once after that second part of it, we're gonna start to do things with Cucumber. All right. So make sure you study your framework a little bit more, and then anything else? Is the class is going in the right pace, or it's too fast, too slow? It's all right, right? Okay. So yeah, study a little bit of Cucumber. I'm gonna give you some documentation on Monday to read about Cucumber. I mean, that's what we're gonna spend next, week or maybe 3 classes, right? And after that, we're gonna start to move to REST API a little bit, how the backend works, how do we test backend, what is Postman, right? Um, and then before you know it, we'll be working on the final project. All right.
Can you scroll up?